right, welcome back. Tanya Pinkins is here. Dr. Jones is here, and she's working on something. Talk a little bit about it and then give us one of your allegories.
Okay, so I am working on something. I'm working on actually a national campaign against racism, that where we need to name racism, ask how is racism operating here, and then organize and strategize to act. So part of my superpower in engaging in some of these conversations that some of us feel like we just don't have time, but here I am still out there, is that I tell stories, allegories that help all of us understand and hopefully talk to other people about racism without hanging up or without, a fight. The four key messages when we're talking about racism are: one, racism exists; two, racism is a system; three, racism saps the strength of the whole society; and four, we can act to dismantle racism. So I'm going to tell you one of my allegories that I use for point one, which is racism exists. And I hinted at it a little bit just a while ago, but wipe your mind and just listen to the story. So most of these stories are actually based on something that happened in my own real life. So I'm going to start when I was a first-year medical student, and I had awakened on a Saturday early to study like I always did, and I was nosing the books, and some friends came over about midday. And did they distract me from my studies? Oh no, we all got to studying long and hard, and it was getting late and we were getting hungry, and I had no food in the apartment, which was so typical of me that my friends even understood. They were like, well, never mind, Camara, we got that, but we are hungry. So let's go into town and find something to eat. So we do. So we walk into town and we find a restaurant, and we walk in and we sit down. Menus are presented. We order our food. Food is served. So if you were in my age group, you might have thought if I'm talking about a restaurant story and racism, that the point would be that we didn't get service, but food is served. But hold on, there's a story about racism in here. As I sat there with my friends eating, I looked across the room and I noticed a sign that was a startling revelation to me about racism. So now I may have intrigued you, and you're like, Dr. Jones, come on, what did the sign say? Well, what does the sign say? The sign said open. So now I may have lost many of you because, like, how is a sign that says open a startling revelation about racism? Well, let me recap. Here I was sitting with my friends eating. I look up and I see a sign that says open, thinking no more about it. I would assume that other hungry people could walk in, sit down, order their food and eat. But because I knew something about the two-sided nature of those signs, I recognized that now, in fact, the restaurant was indeed closed due to the hour, but firmly closed, and that other hungry people just a few feet away from me, but on the other side of that sign, would not be able to come and sit down, order their food and eat. And that's when I recognized that racism structures open, closed signs in our society, that racism structures, if you will, a dual reality. And for those who are sitting inside the restaurant at the table of opportunity eating, and they see a sign that says open, they don't even recognize that there's a two-sided sign going on, because it is difficult for any of us to recognize a system of inequity that privileges us. So for example, it is difficult for men to recognize male privilege and sexism. It is difficult for white Americans to recognize white privilege and racism. In fact, it's difficult for all Americans to recognize our American privilege in the global context, although we are living it quite large right now with how much of the COVID-19 vaccine we have sequestered in this country. Those on the outside, however, are very well aware that there's a two-sided sign going on because it proclaims closed to them, but they can look through the window and see people inside eating. So back inside the restaurant, to those who ask, is there really a two-sided sign? Does racism really exist? I say, I know it's hard for you to know when you only see open. In fact, that's part of your privilege, not to have to know. But once you do know, you can choose to act. So it's not a scary thing to name racism. It's an empowering thing to name racism. It doesn't even compel you to act, but it does equip you to act, so that if you care about those on the other side of the sign, which is an if, but if you do, well, you could even talk to the restaurant owner who is, after all, inside with you, and you could say, restaurant owner, there are hungry people outside. Why don't you open the door, let them come in? you'll make more money. And oh, the conversations we could have. Or maybe what you'll do is try to pass some food through the window, or maybe try to tear down the sign or break through the door. But at least what you won't be doing is sitting back saying, huh, wonder why those people don't just come on in and sit down and eat, because you'll understand something about the the existence of that two-sided sign. So if I could just have one more minute to bring some messages home, that is the basic allegory. But I will say that I have actually started 3-hour conversations on 2 occasions, because the allegory, if I just want to recap, is that racism is structuring two-sided or multi-sided signs in our society. It's creating a dual or multifaceted reality. But I have asked people, how could people who were born inside the restaurant know something about the two-sided nature of that sign? And on 2 occasions, it's been a 3-hour conversation, because there are many, many, many ways to know. So maybe we're going to get some callers on that. But what I want to say is I am actually heartened that more people who were born inside the restaurant, who just 2 years ago would have been sitting there eating, saying, what are those people outside saying? Black lives matter? Don't they know all lives matter? More of those people are actually saying, yes, Black lives matter. More people who were born inside the restaurant are saying the word racism, putting together the phrase structural racism, systemic racism. This is heartening, but even for those people, here's my warning. If we just say a thing, naming racism is important because you have to name a problem in order to get started on the solution. But if you just put something on your webpage or you tweet something out, if you just say a thing, 6 months from now, you may forget why you said that thing, because racism denial is so staunchly held by so many in this country, and it's so seductive that you might fall back into what I describe as the sleepiness, the somnolence of racism denial. So you must go beyond just saying a thing to action. You need to tear down the sign, and racism's not just a sign, it's the sign, it's the door, it's the lock, it's a whole system. Dismantle the lock, take the door off the hinges, because once you start acting, all of us, we will not forget why we are acting. So that's my little story. I call it Dual Reality, a restaurant saga. And the main message is that, yes, racism exists. Lots of us listening here know this, but here's a tool, a story that you can, if you have the patience, that you can share with a coworker or somebody else to help them understand as well.
Well, if I'm inside the restaurant, that was brilliant. If I'm inside the restaurant eating, and I've been conditioned for 400 years to not care, because those people out there are out there because of their own condition. They're out there because they're inferior. They're out there because they came into this country and they're trying to take our jobs. They're out there because they're stupid. They're out there because, they have a poverty mentality anyway. And I was born inside the restaurant. So that's their problem. They need to pull up themselves by the bootstraps, or how about they start their own restaurant? Because this is my restaurant.
Right.
How do you get all of that? Because that's more than I didn't know there's a two-sided sign.
Right. No, I know. And I actually, chapters 3 and 4 of my book are on that, like seven different things that we have to address, like the narrow focus on the individual, ahistorical stance, myth of meritocracy, myth of a zero-sum game, limited future orientation, myth of American exceptionalism, and white supremacist ideology. Those are the things that I think media and maybe, educate, there's a lot, I don't know how we're going to deal with those values targets, right? So I heard all that you said, and I know it. So what do we do? Well, the power really, I've started thinking about those Irish fishermen who said prawn season opens on Tuesday. Now, the Russian army was going to do live fire naval exercises in the Irish Sea off of Ireland. These Irish fishermen said, no, we're going to be there. And they would say, so don't be, we're going to be there to Russia. Russia backed off. What we need to do is recognize our power. Those Irish fishermen made Russia back up, and they're not doing their naval exercises in the Irish Sea anymore. So when you get into the restaurant, those same people who can't go in and eat are still the ones growing the food, bringing it around the back, cooking the food, can't sit in there. So what if we recognized our power and said, okay, you're fine in there by yourself. Okay, well, go. And so like a strike or something like that, like using our power, what we need to do is understand that each of us as individuals we can do stuff. We do have power, but collective power. If we were to strategize and say, well, these people are never intent on doing anything. So So let's use our power
to
get
make it uncomfortable, to make them like Montgomery. Like before
Yes,
Montgomery, I think it was
yes.
Louisiana. I think there was a boycott before that in Louisiana. And I say this, we can't even not watch the Super Bowl because right now we were going to talk about. I mean, this is very real. It's weird to me, but like I don't know that the NFL has put one dime in my pocket or fed anybody or done anything positive in my community. Yet we are wedded to these teams as if our life depends on it. And shout out to the brother that is suing right now, Brian Flores. We're going to talk more about this tomorrow, Friday, what have you. But, if we all decided not to watch the NFL, they would capitulate. That Rooney Rule would be real. If we said we're not watching until 1, 2, 3, Kaepernick gets a job, 5 black coaches are hired, like some real tangibles, we're going to stop watching. Let's get together, huddle up. All right, go. We wouldn't have to not watch for more than 2 weeks.
Right.
We would, the sacrifice wouldn't even be a whole season. But if it was a whole season, the game would be so great. We can't stop drinking Cristal or like smoking one brand of whatever to make a point. And we would only have to, I remember Occupy Wall Street. I'm like, if y'all just did your thing in front of one bank, Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, one bank, you would send a message to the rest. You would shut that bank down everywhere across. Pick one bank, shut it down. You would have everything that you need followed. They couldn't do that. I was like, what's the point of this?
Right. We don't know our power. We don't know our power. They have taken, just like when we were brought over, shackled, many of us. I mean, there's some people who have recently immigrated over here, and they took our humanity. They took our sense of collective, and some of us, so we have acted collectively from time to time, but right now we have bought into this narrow focus on the individual. I got here because I was smart and I worked hard. Yeah, there have been smart, hardworking people in this country for 400 years, right? And you're just now getting here. You are standing on the shoulders of others. We need to recognize we stand on the shoulders of others. We need to learn our own history, and we need to reach out to each other. If we just roll up individual, they are going to roll over us like ball bearings. But if we start thatching out, is how I think it, like Velcro. And like if you're in 3 groups, you need to add 2 more, be in 5 groups and put important things on the agendas of your groups, not just what party you're going to plan, but like important things, what you're talking about, Karen. And if we start doing that and know our power, we could do a lot more.
If we just did the Divine 9. Hi, y'all. If we just did the Divine, and each one had a specific mission, right? The Qs, because of Carter G. Woodson, focuses on history, because that's how they came in. They supported Carter G. Woodson. The Omega Psi Phi fraternity, that's your job across the country, is making sure that there's Saturday classes or there's some Black history. The Alphas, you focus on money and banking. The Sigmas, you focus on let's take another sector that we need, housing and development, and like there has to be, and then the deltas and the gamma. I know there's a bunch of them, 9 of them. I can't think of all of them. AKA. I know there's a lot of. That's Omega. If we just did that, because I started off like hoping that the NAACP and the Urban League and all those could come together to do something. I was widely.
But they try. They do try. We just don't know about it because I guess I don't know. But yeah, they do.
You would know about it if they were really about this life locally. There's some amazing Urban League locally, because I deal with them locally. There's some amazing. Joy Williams is the head of the Brooklyn NAACP. She does an amazing job. Locally, the local leaders are amazing. Nationally, there should be a hammer, and there should be fear. But we have allowed ourselves to get bought out because the corporate America, they know that they can throw some money at these organizations and they're going to be real quiet. You just sit down and take this money and think about what you said. Take this check and you be quiet. Don't you hold us accountable. We gave you $1 million, as if that's a lot of money.